It's Aston, Avery here, and Stephen Smith. And I'm going to hand over to Stephen, who's going to be introducing our next guest, who's lined up for us right now.
You're going to love this guest. Arguably can be described as the quintessential man's man. Football supporting, a bit of a laugh, but like many men in the UK, he was hiding anxiety, self-doubt. He decided to do something about it. He enrolled in a stand-up comedy course. He's a journalist, a coach, and it's his birthday. Welcome, Nick.
And happy birthday.
Hello, hi.
And happy birthday, Nick, as well, before I start.
Thanks
as well.
Very much. Yeah, 21 today.
Look, what's the dog called? It's so cute.
Harry was his full name because he's a rescue dog. He got him from a rescue centre in Tottenham, so his full name is Harry Canine.
Ah, that's clever.
Listen, your story really pressed some buttons with you. You enrolled in a stand-up comedy course to get over your fear of public speaking. Did it really work? Did it help?
I think so, to a certain degree. I mean, it was partially to do that, and partially I just sort of thought I've always quite fancied doing it, but I've always been scared of doing it. So the ethos behind it was basically, if I can break through that barrier and do something which is really scary, then other things in life should be easier.
I mean, I've got training as an actor, but if you ask me to public speak, I practically wet myself. I was even Anna bullied me to do it, and I'm going to do radio, and also public speaking terrifies me. It's interesting that you go from one to the other.
I mean, it didn't sort of. I mean, I think that the main thing I got out of it, because everyone, when you say it to anyone, they go, "Oh, that must have been petrifying, terrifying." Yeah. What you sort of forget is that anyone who goes to a comedy night, you actually want the performers to do well, so everyone's on your side, so it isn't as bad as you think. And if you can attempt to just get in the moment and relax, then it's fun.
You didn't get any hecklers?
Not really, no.
So, Nick, as well, having interviewed a load of people in my broadcasting career here over the years, how many people living with depression? How would you describe it to others who are listening, who cannot begin to understand the feeling of living with it here?
I mean, the way I sort of describe it to people, because I've suffered from depression, and with that comes anxiety. So when I'm going through an episode, which has happened lots of times over sort of 30 years, I describe it as, if you can imagine when you're on a roller coaster, you know, and you're approaching the top of the ascent where it goes really, really slowly, and then you get to that top bit just before you fall. That's how it feels 24/7. You're at that edge where you just think something horrendous is about to happen at any moment. So you sort of live in perpetual fear, and it's just a heightened state of sort of just being absolutely terrified all the time for no actual reason.
Do you think it's different for everybody else? I interviewed Denise Welsh, and she said that she was talking about being in a paper shop, and she looked down at a paper, and the Hillsborough disaster was in the front cover, and a black cloud came over her, and eventually left, but it comes back every so often.
Yeah, I mean, I think people have different triggers, and obviously as you sort of try to navigate your own life, getting through it, it's trying to understand those triggers. And I guess, I don't know, I suppose the main thing I've learned over the years, which, I mean, I'm anticipating, I'm only 51, it probably will happen again, but what I have to try and remind myself is that whatever awful state you're in, it will pass. Things change. It's not a perpetual state. Things alter. So you have to, at the time, it's hard to remind yourself that, but you have to try and do that.
Yeah, you described your childhood as complex, and I know I've interviewed actors and people before. How often do you look in the mirror and see the boy you used to be, look back at you?
I would say less now than I used to. I think because I've had quite a lot of therapy, and it's been going on for quite a long time. So you sort of learn to live with it, and you understand your own issues a little bit more, and you understand that whatever happened in your childhood when you might have felt powerless, and that sort of added to your dysfunctionalness when you're an adult, and you can be a bit more in control of your emotions. Then if you can remember that, you don't have to feel helpless. So, you know, I don't feel like that as often. But then if you'd interviewed me 5 years ago, I probably wouldn't have given you that answer.
I don't know if you listened to Michael Parrott, the addiction counsellor we just had on, and we were talking about men's perspective of what counselling is, and they think, you know, you lie on a chair. It's so different now, counselling. Did you find it helped you?
I mean, I've had all sorts of different therapy, counselling, tried all sorts of things. I mean, for me, I've probably seen, I don't know, 10, 15 different counsellors of different sorts in my life. And I would say maybe 3 or 4 have worked properly. And the reasons those have worked is not because of a particular discipline, it's because of the connection. So I think if you can have a personal connection with your therapist, then you're more likely to sort of listen to what they're saying, and it's going to have, it's going to work.
So you're basically saying don't be afraid to shop around for a counsellor if you decide to go.
Yeah, I think so. If you start and you just don't feel it with that person, you don't have to stick with them, and no one says you have to do that. So
yeah.
Indeed, and this is something, and I've opened up this a lot here, Nick, as well, is that I live with autism, and I found performing aids me when getting up on stage, etc. And I know you get up on stage as well, Nick, doing all this as well. So how would people with autism get into stand-up comedy like we've seen on Britain's Got Talent, Robert White, in the past?
I mean, I think primarily you've just got to want to do it, and just, I mean, it's I can't remember who wrote that book, but the book's called, Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway, and that's basically what it is. You've got to go for it. You've got to think that, what is the worst that can happen? Ultimately, it's standing on stage. You might have a bit of tumbleweed. You're not going to die. Nothing terrible is going to happen, and the chances are you'll get some sort of positive reaction. Then you'll get a massive confidence boost, and you can take something from it. So just do it. Why not?
Well, when you went into stand-up comedy, you had no intention of talking about your mental health issues. Isn't that the problem in this country? We're afraid to talk about it.
Yes and no. I mean, I would say when I first started having sort of episodes, probably early 90s, no one talked about it at all. And I've sort of left jobs before because I just couldn't even talk to my bosses. So I just sort of skulked off. Whereas now it's happened more recently. I'm a freelance journalist, so I write for lots of different publications. When it happened last time, I spoke to all my editors and said, look, this is happening. And they were like, it's okay, take as long as you need. So it does feel like more and more people are discussing it, and it's improving. But I think the bigger problem is people getting access to the services which can help them. That's where we need to improve.
Yeah, absolutely.
Indeed. And with that being said as well, we've mentioned this a couple of times already here today, Nick, as well, is obviously discussing about feeling about how Joanna Lumley and Piers Morgan saying that the mental health card is too often literally played now we're here. But do you think that's the case?
I don't think that's a particularly helpful thing to say, really. I think that maybe... I think it's really an illustration that people are more willing to talk about mental health. Obviously, there's different sort of thresholds. Someone who's having suicidal thoughts for 6 months is not the same as someone who's having an anxious day. They're two very different things, but better that all of those things are talked about than none of them.
Yeah. I think that's one thing I agree a lot. Piers Morgan says his views on mental health is not the. I learned from an early age if you used humour, it covered up a lot of facts because I'm actually quite shy. But is that not sometimes an asset to have learned that, to use humour?
Again, sort of. I mean, yes. I mean, I've done exactly the same. But I think if you use it as just a complete mask and a complete shield, and then you don't talk about it at all, then I think you're probably not really helping yourself. But I mean, in the comedy that I'm attempting to do, I do actually talk about that. I'm very open about the issues I've had, and I try to see the funny side of it, but I'm not like shying away from talking about it because it's part of me, but it's not all of me.
Yeah,
indeed. Now, this is never funny, I have to say here, Nick, and absolutely not funny is when someone, even men, hide so much that the pain is so great that sadly, unfortunately, they commit suicide, which sadly as well, many men in the UK do just that here. So how can our listeners get help when at that stage there?
It's very difficult when you almost need to, and this is why having a show like this or just generally talking about mental health is a good thing, because when you get to that point where you're actually going to do that, you're so far gone, it's very, very difficult to talk. So, the goal is to get people to talk earlier. If you access help earlier on, you're not going to get to that point. But again, I think I said earlier on, the main message is to just try to sort of hammer home to people, however serious you might feel at that particular point, is that, how you feel today, that is not going to be the same tomorrow, next week, 2 months, 3 months, 6 months. People, the human brain has an amazing power of recovery. I mean, I was unable to work, speak, do anything 5 years ago, literally couldn't do anything at all. And now my life's relatively normal.
What was rarely talked about is those that are left behind when it does happen. I remember my friend killed themselves, and to this day it haunts me. How do they get help?
Again, it's very difficult, but I think it's just, I think as a nation, we've got to try and sort of encourage a culture of talking, and, people like Piers Morgan or whoever it is trying to sort of diminish discussion of mental health just doesn't help, because, the other issue obviously with suicide particularly is that it's almost like an inherited condition. If that happens to someone, to a loved one, and they don't talk about it, they're going to take all that hurt and pain with them, and who knows what's going to happen to generations down the line. So we need to be in a culture where people feel they're not going to be sort of like bullied out of talking about it, so that it doesn't happen again.
Absolutely. And I think, as I said, Piers is a big voice, and it's a great pity because he's great in other subjects. He just hasn't grasped the mental health side of things.
Well, I just hope that he doesn't have to go through that at some point in his life, because it can happen to anyone. It can happen to shy people. It can happen to confident people.
Or one of his sons live with it and see what the outcomes is.
So this being said as well here, and Nick, obviously we're talking about how it feels to be a man. So what does it mean to you to be a man here?
In what sense?
In any sense, really. It could be mental health. It could be what you do as a career.
I don't really think particularly about sort of being a man, or gender's not really.
Yeah, absolutely.
I just am. I don't know. I don't. It's not something I really. I mean, I may have the interest I have and live the sort of life I live, but I'm not really very conscious of being male much of the time, to be honest. I don't really think about it. Except when I'm in the bath or the shower, then obviously it becomes obvious.
On a lighter note, what are your favourite comedians?
Probably my ultimate favourite comedian is Stuart Lee.
Okay.
Yeah, who I like a lot. He's sort of a combination of satire and absurdity and politics, but I think he's very clever, and I've seen him quite a few times live, and I leave with, a pained stomach from laughing so much, that's what you want to pay the money for. So, yeah.
You do when you go to comedy shows there on that. And is there anything got lined up next here, Nick?
Yeah, I've just had a hip operation, bizarrely, about a month or 3 weeks ago. So I've been trying to get over that, which is fine. I feel more or less sort of recovered, bizarrely. But then I'm doing a competition called So You Think You're Funny, which is on at the final will be at the Gilded Balloon in Edinburgh this summer. So I've got the heats of that in about a month. So I'm going to be doing a few stand-up gigs in London for the next 3 or 4 weeks, getting ready for that, and then see what happens. And then my day job is freelance journalism. I interview celebrities. That's what I do for a living.
Oh, brilliant. Okay. How can people find you?
They can find my website, Nick McGrath, freelancejournalist.co.uk.
Oh, well, listen, have a great birthday. Are you doing anything for it?
I am. I will be having a hot chocolate with my kids later, and then going to the pub with my mates and having a drink or 3 later.
Who's taking the dog out with your hair?
Well, a friend looked after him, actually, but now I've had him back for the last 2 weeks, so it's fine. Although he's in the wars as well. He killed a fox 2 days ago.
Well done.
Wow. So there you go. Enjoy the rest of your birthday there, and Nick, and happy birthday from us as well.
Very much. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Cheers. Thanks.
Bye.
Nick McGrath.